Very good day to you, and thank you for watching our Behind Me channel. I'm Shenali, and today you are joining us on an exclusive interview, and I really want to dive into this topic of the real estate market. I know it's a very troublesome topic because a lot of people have to dive really deep into it because there are so many things that you have to keep in mind: the legislations, the documents, the market price, the inflation, everything. So to talk about this issue, I have an expert with me, Mr. Riyaz Rauf, who is a seasoned realtor in the Ontario region, and also he will have many experience, coming with the ups and downs of the real estate market. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Shanali. Appreciate you inviting me, and it's always a pleasure to be here.
So, Mr. Riyaz, now when talking about the real estate market, as I said, there are two parties. There are buyers, there are sellers. And when you're a buyer, you need to consider, the legislation part of real estate. And I've seen like so many headliners today even. For example, Bank of Canada keeps a wary eye on housing market, but rates cuts will likely continue. The next, CTV also reported that, there's a positive movement in Ottawa's real estate market in October with home sales up nearly 50%. So like that, there are so many fluctuations also. What exactly is happening in the current context of the real estate market right now?
So also, Shanali, it's very interesting when you have these articles, after a month, go back and look at those articles and just see which is right and what they were talking at that point. Was it even worth writing on a piece of paper sometimes?
Exactly.
Right? Nobody can predict anything because we don't have a crystal ball. All what we can do is we can analyze trends, do a educated guess where the industry is going. For example, even before becoming a realtor, I'm a real estate investor. So as an investor, I make decisions, and as a realtor, I advise people, others, and to myself what we do. So this is where the whole thing comes into play. Nobody can, in today's market, nobody can predict anything 100%. What we are doing is the best educated guess that we are sharing with you.
That's right. Also, Mr. Riyaz Rauf, before we continue with our discussion, I want you to give a little description about yourself also. I know who you are, and a lot of people do when you talk about Riyaz Rauf. Yes, the main realtor in the Ontario region. So if you can tell me a little bit about your experience so the audience knows who you are.
Thanks, Shanali, for the opportunity. So I would say I have been almost in the industry for 10 years, but I have been an investor before coming into the industry. I am Sri Lankan by background and also into real estate in Sri Lanka. My major studies and work has been in the field of communication and marketing, and that's my forte, and I'm using that to my advantage in real estate. Now, I do operate in Ontario and primarily in GTA and Horseshoe area.
All right,
That's a quick summary.
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. So now to continue with the discussion, as I mentioned earlier, the market is fluctuating so much. The rates are going up and in one moment it's going down. So people are confused like when to buy. Should I be selling my house at this point? Should I be buying a house at this point? Why do you think are the reasons for this fluctuation? Like, what can the country do for this, and what should sellers or buyers be aware about?
See, the best way to look at it, since you asked me in a different way, and I really like it, is the best way to advise is investment in real estate and being in real estate is like being in the middle of the ocean. There are most of the times that are calm, and there are times where there are storms. Now, the way that we are, some people are in ships, some people are in boats, and some people are in canoes. So the storm affects each one in different ways. For example, when you say an investor, how a recession or a downturn affects the investor is totally different to someone who buys a first house as an investment and calls himself an investor. It affects because sometimes that person might be shattered, whereas a genuine investor will absorb those losses and happily write off against all other profits generated from other businesses and other profits. So it is very important to understand that before stepping into real estate as an investor or as an end user. So we are all in the same ocean, but it affects differently. Having told that, there is no way that we can avoid being part of the global economy and part of the local economy. We have to look at the trends being in Canada based on where the Canadian economy is going. And also, unfortunately, certain things that are happening across the world in terms of wars that are happening, the issues that are happening, the petrol price, and who is ruling which country. And even we have, 2 days ago, we had the elections in US. And now how that would impact positively, negatively into Canada and Canadian real estate. It has a huge bearing. Mm-hmm. So it is this scenario that we operate in.
That's true. So likewise, as you said, the situation is affecting people in different ways, right? So one thing which I came across is, the main issue which Canada is facing right now is immigration. A lot of people are coming in, and the housing, there has been a problem with supply. Students I've seen, they can't find houses. A lot of people are in one small cramped house. They say places are not available. Why do you think that this is the issue, considering, Canada is a big country? Why don't we have the adequate amount of homes for the population in Canada?
Okay, interesting question. Let me take with the last part first. Canada is supposed to be the second largest country in the world in terms of geography. And we have 9,995,000 square kilometers of land. So one would assume if we have this much of land, we can build as much as we want. Now the problem comes in, 98% of those land is crown land, which means we can't build unless there could be reserves, there could be mining, it could be mountains, uninhabitable or unusable or protected land. Then we are left with only 11% that we can inhabit. Of that 11%, 48% is owned by the federal government and the rest by the provincial government. Now, within this 11%, we have to have green belts, lakes, human facilities, and transportation, plus residences and schools and other stuff. Now, this is where it becomes even more complicated. Now, if you take up the highest value of land and homes are in Vancouver and Ontario. If we look at Vancouver, technically it's island. So you cannot build anywhere you want, but just go up. If you take Ontario, on one side we are covered with Lake Ontario, and on the other side with the green belt. So where are we going to build? The other thing is 90% of our population lives within 100 kilometers of the US border, because most of the the businesses, the habitation, living, everything happens within that category. So not many people want to expand beyond that. So this brings us into a very small area, that's buildable, livable area in Canada. It's true that we got about 2 million lakes, right? Also, if you look at it, like we have, I think we got 6.5 million homes in Canada. Each home has about 2.53 people living in each home, and number of homes are close to 6.5 million. So this is the scenario that we are facing in Canada.
Okay. I also want to pick up on a point that you told me prior to this recording. We had a small discussion and you said some years ago, people have been building more homes and gradually there had been a decrease throughout the years. So how has geography have to do with that?
Okay. So this is to do with the reason is I'll just look at my cue cards also. So this is for single homes. The number of permits that are being issued to build single homes. In 1980, there were 100,000 permits. In 1990, there were 138,000 permits. In 2000, there were only 90,000 permits. And in 2010, 75,000 permits. 2020, 60,000 permits. And 23, 50,000 permits. So gradually, the number of permits have dropped, meaning the number of approvals to build has dropped in terms of single-family residences. Now, also, there is a statistic that shows for every 20 people that is added to the Canadian population, only one single family home gets built. That is the seriousness of that question. Now, for example, the one of the easiest ways that I can explain this is a condo takes 4 to 5 years to be built. If we speak of GTA and Canada, in GTA there is an annual demand for 25,000 condos to be completed and given to people. That's the demand. But we have met or exceeded this demand so far only on 4 occasions.
Okay.
Last year, we went up to 28,000, which means there is 3,000 over the demand. But it's not a concern because we have been having consistent deficits over the last 8 years, so that got absorbed. This year, we have gone up to 48,000, whereas the demand is only for 25,000. Part of it also will gradually get absorbed. Next year, we are completing only 18,000 units. And the year after, we are doing only 8,000 units. In 2027, the demand is for 25,000. We might end up doing less than 2,000. The reason for that is, like I said, a condo takes 4 to 5 years to build. In the last 2 years, the interest rate has been very prohibitively high for a builder to borrow to start building a condo. So builders kept away or shied away from launching building projects and starting off. Whatever they haven't started off, only what they have started now they can complete in 5 years. So now, as an investor, I would always be looking at pre-construction condos that are to be completed in 28, 29, 30. I know most likely if I invest in those, I'm going to make not profits, supernormal profits. But on the other hand, if I were to invest something, if I had invested something 4 years ago, and if the condo was coming to my hand now, I see an oversupply of 48,000 while the demand is for 25,000, which means I got a 23,000 or 50% oversupply. And also the rates are high to invest because 70% of the condominiums are bought by investors. And investors would buy a property only if they can break even. For them to break even, they should be able to get a mortgage around 3 to 2.5% or less. So that is where the market gets generated and things get normal. So I'm sure at the moment, the condo market is stagnant and it will take about another 8 to 9 months to get back to normal. And also that would be fast forwarded if the interest rates drops steep and they are able to get a mortgage for 3 to 3.5%, which is close because presently a fixed mortgage can be taken for about 4.05%, etc. I hope I answered that to an extent.
Yes. So if I'm a buyer, would you advise me to invest or buy a house right now in the current context?
Okay, fair question. So we got to break it into 2 different categories. One is the condominium market, resale condominium market, resale freehold market. So that is the houses. Right?
Yes.
So our advice at the moment for condos is, if you're buying a resale condo, whether you buy now or whether you buy in 6 months, it doesn't matter. The prices would most likely be the same. Right? But in 3 to 4 months' time, you're going to get a better mortgage rate.
Right.
Right? So there is no need for you to rush. On the other hand, if you were to go in now, you're going to have a wider pool to select and you're getting the best of choices. Like the best view, best flow plan, you can get it now. But whether you get it now or in another 6 months, price may not be a big difference in the condo market. And if you're a seller of a condo, we say, please do not sell now. You must be crazy to sell now. Hold on for at least 6 months. The conditions will be better for sale.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to, you said you want to buy a home, I would say, as far as you're qualified and you can afford and you're comfortable in paying the mortgage for 3 to 5 years, go for it as soon as possible. But there are plenty of properties in the market, reasonably priced, and you're having a huge choice, and you're not going with multiple offers at the moment, although it's just beginning, and you will not have this luxury in another 2 months. Which also says, if somebody is a seller, at least hold on for another 2 months. You're going to get on average house of, say, if average house is about 1 million, 1.1 million, if you were to sell in another 3 months' time, you're going to get at least 40 to 50,000 more than today's price. Similarly, if you're a buyer, you might be paying that price in another 2 or 3 months' time.
Right.
So the choice is yours.
Okay, understood. So when coming to these government policies, now these are something that, the buyers or sellers needs to be updated on, like the foreign buyers ban, the vacancy taxes or the short-term rental restrictions. So how is this affecting the local market and how can these people be aware about it? What are the main things that people should keep in mind right now?
See, one of the things, Shanella, what we advise, me and my son, we are together in the business, what we tell is, as far as you are buying your first house is mostly primary home that you're going to live. There is no much complications with that. But you're not going to rent it out, you're going to live there. You're not going to do Airbnb, you're going to live there. That's a different story. Now, when you're going to buy your second property, what we call the investment property, whether you use it or no, it's called the investment property because you have a lot of benefits. In the first primary home that you buy, you got to pay the mortgage, you got to pay the mortgage, interest, etc., property tax, etc. On the investment property, the mortgage, interest, the property tax, and the maintenance fees can be claimed from taxes and paid off. So you got a lot of benefits. Similarly, you also have to understand not only that you need a good realtor, you also need a good tax advisor and an accountant who would say, oh, this is what your realtor is saying. Yes, what he says is correct, but not to the extent he says, but these complications could come in. So we always give you advice to also double check with your tax consultant lawyer. For example, there are our clients who bought properties and they're doing Airbnb on condos. Now, there's a new rule that is going to come into place if they pass it. I hopefully think they will not pass it, which means every Airbnb property will be considered a business property. And when they sell, that would be subject to 13% HST. So in other words, if you had bought a property for 800,000 and you sell that for 1 million, now from that 1 million, you have to pay 130,000 at HST. Okay? Yes. Now you are left with only 70,000 profit from that, and that too is taxed at about 40% because it's a business, and then you have the realtors and the legal fees, and you are not making any money out of it. Now, people are proposing these, but these are not implemented, but people should be aware how to do it. As realtors, what we say is, say for example, we had a client who bought a Airbnb property and doing really well at this moment, and more so this very moment because they're per night they're making about 2,800 on Airbnb. Because who is this girl who is the American singer is in downtown?
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift is here. So everybody's here to stay at the Airbnb and go to a show. 2,800. On a normal day, it's about $300. Right? Now, what we suggested to him is we said, someday rules may change. Buy your property with a car park. Although downtown you don't want car park, but we said buy with a down park. So you may cancel your Airbnb, you might use it as your residence and live there forever. So there are few things. So the short answer is, it's complicated. We try to explain everything, but you got to listen to your tax consultant to how it comes into play. Vacancy tax, it's not a big deal, but you got to know when to fill, how to fill, and what forms to sell. Foreign buyer tax, unfortunately, foreigners are not allowed to buy now.
Yes.
That was a good policy until last week, because now that our friend Trump is being elected in the south of the border, there had been a surge, a spike of more than 150% increase in the Americans visiting Realtor.ca in Canada looking for properties here. But my question is, unfortunately, they can't buy properties in Canada. So why do you want to restrict these genuine, wealthy Americans who wants to move in and buy properties? Just let it open, at least for the Americans.
Okay, that's another question which I want to lead up on. Trump's election now, since he has been brought back into power. I mean, the news is all over that, he's going to increase the import taxes. So how is that going to affect the real estate market right now?
Thank you for asking that, Shanala. Let me quickly explain two things that comes into play before going into that. Okay? Each time the Bank of Canada reduces the bank rate, we were at 5%, now we are at 3.7%. Most likely on the 11th of December, we might get a minimum 0.25, but I think it's going to be another 0.50. We need that. That will keep going down. Each time the rate is cut, our rates are going down. That's understood. Variable rate is always related to the Bank of Canada's rate. Our fixed rate mortgage is always related to the bond market and the bond yield. Now, that is going to be a huge topic when it comes to Donald Trump's term. Donald Trump has, rightfully speaking for his country and the citizens, said, we are going to make America great and we are going to increase the tariff for every import by 10%, which makes Canadian products going into America 10% more expensive, or they buy less, or they don't buy our products, whatever happens. He's also going to make America great, and he have told he's going to run a deficit budget, which means he has to borrow more money, which means he has to issue more bonds. To attract the bonds, he is going to have a better ROI or better rate offered on the bond market. When the bond market is yielding a higher interest, the fixed mortgage rates also will demand a higher rate, and the fixed rates may not drop. So in the long term, I'm not saying it will happen in the next 3 or 4 months, but in about 5 to 6 months' time, we will see the variable rates in Canada going down rapidly, and the fixed rates either staying steady or not going down as much as what we expect now. And another thing, Shanella, is, although it's very technical, I'll explain this. When we reduce interest rates and America doesn't reduce as much as we reduce, for example, we are at 3.7%, the Americans are at 4.25 at the moment. Like when we did it in June, our parity, the currency was at 73 cents to the US dollar. Or you need 73 US dollars to buy a Canadian dollar. Today it's at 71. We have already lost 2 cents on 71, which is we have lost almost 3% of the value of the Canadian dollar. Now, when we import US products into Canada or using US dollar currency, all our products are 3% more expensive. Like if you're going to buy clothing from US now, it's going to be 3% expensive than what it used to be 6 months ago.
True.
Which means we are importing inflation into the country now.
That's going to be tough because already we are going into an inflation.
Yes. Unless, of course, we start getting more, our monetary policies becoming more liberal, interest rates going down, and our industry is borrowing more and producing more supplies and increasing efficiencies, and we are getting more things exported because to the world now our things are about 3 to 5% cheaper than others, so we might catch up on those. So to get that, rates have to come down. That's why I'm more confident about a 0.50 cut in December than 0.25.
All right, so Canadians have to be aware of this. I don't feel like it's going to go good for the buyers, but as you said, it might go otherwise for the sellers.
Yeah, and from my point of view and the audience is that when I talk of all this, I've been talking of the interest rate going down. And when the interest rate goes down, what happens is, sales increase. People who are staying on the background now, who are not buying, saying we'll buy later, etc., are coming to the market and buying sooner and faster. The volume is going to go up. When the volumes go up, the prices will follow. I'm not saying prices will go up and volumes will follow. It's the other way around. The volumes will increase and the prices will go up. For example, last month, we finished October. Last year, October, we did about 4,400 sales. This year, we did 6,000 plus. It was a 44% increase in the volume. Value-wise, we increased only by 1.1%. So even the 1.1% value was $12,000 more than the amount that was last year.
Yes.
So value will go up, and end of this month you will see sales are up, prices will be also up. I would say around the 3 to 4% mark.
All right, Mr. Riyaz. Unfortunately, we are running out of time on the program as well. I want to end off this discussion with your advice. Would you tell our viewers to go with a fixed rate or a variable rate?
I'm a realtor and not a financial consultant or a mortgage broker. So I would always say it's best you speak to your mortgage broker and ask advice on how to get about. But you can always mention what we do, because most of my advice comes from based on what my clients are doing now and what I have been doing for my properties that are invested. One of the things that we are doing is whatever we buy, we are buying for a longer closure. Say, for example, we used to buy for 1 month closing, 2 months or 3 months. Now we are taking for February closure. The reason why we are taking February is then we are going to benefit with the rate drop in December, January, and also February. So we will get a better margin. But on the other hand, if somebody has to go for a refinancing or something like this, now you might as well go for a short-term fixed on one side, because in the long term, my opinion is variable is going to be very lucrative. And also the huge difference between the variable and the fixed. A fixed mortgage, when you break a fixed mortgage, it's very expensive, because if you're on a 4-year fix and if you're breaking after 1 year, you have to pay the interest for the balance 3 years. But on the other hand, if you have a variable and if you're breaking it, most banks charge you interest only for 3 months. So as an investor, it's always lucrative to have, it's better to have a variable, because as investors, we get opportunity to sell, we sell that, we move on to a different property, we do. But fixed, mostly for people who are buying, saying, you know what, I'm going to live here for 5 years, I want a permanent amount that I'm paying every month. I have mental peace. That works for them.
All right, Mr. Riyaz, thank you so much for your insights. I'm pretty sure we'll be having another discussion because real estate market is not something that we can finish off in 30 minutes. But yes, I'll be happy to get you on air again. And thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much, and all the very best to you. And also, if audience want to clarify something, reach out to Shanella, and we'll get back to you on any other question that you want to.
Thank you so much. And with that, we finish off our interview, our exclusive interview. Keep watching Behind Me channel and also drop down in the comments if you want Mr. Riyaz Rauf to give you more advice on, if you want Behind Me to do any more exclusive interviews with your request. And I'm Shanali from Behind Me International Media. Have a great day.